Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to another Excel tutorial video. My name is Jay. In this video, we're going to write a macro to split a CSV file. So the idea actually came from this job posting. So I've been seeing a lot job postings recently asking to split either an Excel file or a CSV file. And that's how why not just build a simple tool to perform this task. And this tool will be macro, which we can use for just about any CSV file. So the concept is we'll take a CSV file and we'll split the CSV file into different files based on different categories. In this case, we are going to split a master CSV file based on column D. And here's our raw data set. And we want to take the unique list based on column D, and we're going to split the master CSV file based on how many unique items in column D. In this case, we only have 2 unique IDs in column D. So that means when we run the macro, only 2 CSV files will get produced. Now let me close this Excel file. And before we go into the tutorial, let me just give a demonstration on the tool. So right here's the tool I already built. And if I go to View, Macros, and you have a macro called split CSV. Now if I run the macro, I'm going to get a window dialog pop-up, and it's going to ask me to select the source file. And my source file in this case will be pinnacle output.csv. And I'm going to select this file, and I'm going to click on OK. Now the macro is going to grab the master CSV file, and it's going to split the file into different batches based on the category. In this case will be column D. And once the job is finished, we can open one of the CSV file for FED ID 4611. So here's the records or the tables for that particular ID. Now let me close everything. So we're going to start from scratch. So here I have a separate Excel file. In this file, there's no VBA coding in this file. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your Excel file is saved as macro enabled file. And to do that, you can go to File, Save As, Browse, and just make sure that when you save the Excel file, you want to choose the file type as Excel macro enabled workbook. Next, we want to open the VBA window by going to the Developer tab and click on Visual Basic. Here I'm going to insert a new module, and we close the project window so we have a little more room to work with. Here I'm going to create my subroutine. I'll name the subroutine split CSV. So I'll start by declare my variables. So I'm going to have a couple workbooks objects. So I'll name the first object WP tool as workbook. And this object is going to refer to the current Excel file we'll be using to run the macro. And the source Excel file. So I'll name that as WB source as workbook. And the output file as workbook. Next, we're going to create a source worksheet tab. So I'll name that worksheet as WS source as worksheet. Now let's go back to the Excel template, and here I'm going to rename the tab name to source. Okay. And we're going to have a last row variable as long, and this variable is going to store the source CSV file path. And I'll name this variable source CSV path a string. And based on your use case, we can create the next variable based on your name convention. So you can name the next variable as maybe category, this can be grouping type. It's all up to you. But since my use case is pretty specific, so I'll name this variable as FED ID. And to make things a little bit easier for me, I'm going to delete these two files. And let me open the master CSV file. So this FEDID variable is going to represent the FEDID in column D for this CSV file. And the data type is going to be string. And to extract the unique list from your category, in this case will be FEDID column, we're going to create a collection object. The collection object is basically a hash table similar to Python's dictionary. So I'll name my object, collection object, as collection, FEDS as collection. And the last one is helper variable. So I'm going to name this variable as V as a variant. And that's all the variables we need to declare. If I were performing this task by hand, so what I want to have a tool or a function to allows me to select the file. And in this case will be the window dialog pop-up. And to create that functionality, so here I'm going to create a function. And it's going to be a public function. And I'll name this function browse file. And we're going to save the output string. So this function is going to return the file path based on the file that you select. In this function, we're going to create a couple variables. The first variable is going to be the file path as string. The second variable is going to be the file dialog object. And I'll name the object as FD as file dialog. We also need to create the file dialog filters. And I'll name the object as FFS as file dialog filters. Here I'm going to insert an error handler. So I'm going to say that on error, go to troubleshoot. And here I'll create my troubleshoot point. So what happens is when this function encounters an error, it's going to go to this line right here. And here's where we can decide how we want to handle the error. And I want to set the browse file function to empty. Oops, should be browse file. And I'll set the output as empty string. And here I'll insert the exit function statement. And here I'll insert another line label. So this is actually called line label. And both the exit function statement, I'll insert another line label. And I'll name this label clean up. After the clean up label point, I want to empty out all the objects. In this function, I have two objects. One is the FD object, and the other one is the FFS object. And go back to the troubleshoot label. Once we assign the function output to an empty string, I want to go to clean up label. So go to clean up. And here we're going to create our window dialog to select the file. Here I'm going to type set fd is equals to application.file dialog. And we have four options. So we can select a file, or if we want to have a window dialog to save a file. And this one is to open a file. And I want to choose file dialog file picker. And within the FD object, I want to create my file dialog filter first. So I'm going to type set FFS is equals to period filters. Let me make a little bit more room. With FFS object, I want to clear the filter first. Next, I want to add the filters. Since my file is only going to be CSV file, so for the description, I'm going to type CSV source file. For the file extension, I'm going to insert the wildcard symbol, period, CSV. And this extension filter is only going to allowing us to select CSV files. I also want to make sure that we can only choose one file at a time. So I'm going to set the allow multi-select setting to false. And here I'm going to insert if statement. So if that show is equals to false, then I want to go to the cleanout label. Otherwise, I'm going to assign the file path to the file path variable. So I'm going to type file path is equals to dot select item, and it's going to be index number 1. And lastly, we can assign the function output based on the file path variable. In theory, you can directly assign the browse file function to replace the file path right here. Just in case if I want to do more things with the file path variable or the file path, maybe I want to extract just the folder path, maybe I want to extract just the file name, and that's why I always like to create a temporary variable for me to store the file path first. And when finished, I will assign the file path to the function. Alright, now we're done with the browse file function. Now let's go back to the split CSV file macro. Here I'll create my WB tool object. So I'll type set WB tool is equals to this workbook. And for my source worksheet, WS source is equals to WB tool dot worksheets. And we need to assign the worksheet name. And the worksheet name is going to be source. And let me put that back. Oops, let me go back. And here I want to browse the browse CSV file. Okay, so insert my browse file function, and we'll assign the output to the source CSV path variable. Oops, this should be browse file. Here I'm going to insert if statement to verify that the source CSV path variable. Here I'm going to say that if source CSV path is equals to empty string, then I want to go to clean up label. Should be clean up. And here let me create my clean up label. So far we have 2 objects created. So the first object is WB tool, and the second object is WS source. And again, I want to insert another error handler within my main subroutine. So here I'm going to type on error, go to error handle. And I'll insert my error handle label right here. And I need to insert the exit sub statement. Oh, actually I mixed that up. So this should go to the top, and the error handle label should go below exit sub statement. In case if I run into any error, I want to print the error message. And to display the error message, I'll use a message box. And to get the error description, I'll type err.description. Then I want to go to the cleanout label. Now let's go back to the main subroutine. So once we validate that the source CSV file path is not empty, then we can start extracting the information or the records. So first, I want to clear all the records or the contents on the source tab. So I'll type ws source.cells.clear contents, and this will clear everything on the source worksheet. So clear everything on source tab. Next, I want to open the source CSV file. So I'll type set wb source is equals to workbooks.open, and we know we have the source path from the source CSV path variable. So this one's going to be open source file, CSV file. For me, every time I want to perform something such as data manipulation, data analysis, I don't want to apply anything directly on the source data. I like to make a copy of the source data. That way that if I mess up something, if I made a mistake, I can always go back to the source data. So here I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the source data set. In this case will be the table from the Pinnacle output file. I want to copy this table to my source tab. So copy source data to source sheet. And I'm going to type wb source.worksheet. And since we are dealing with a CSV file, there can be only one worksheet. So we can safely assume the index value is always going to be 1. Cells.copy. I want to copy the content to my source tab. So ws source. And I want to insert the data in range A1. Let me put a stop right here. I'm going to rearray each line one by one to make sure that I'm not making any mistake. So I'll press F5 to run the macro, and I'm going to select the file. As you can see that my execution stopped right here where the start statement is. Now if I go back to my master spreadsheet, which is my macro enabled file, and here I can see the content is copied over to the source tab. Now let me press F5 to finish the execution. Let me close all the CSV files. So after we insert the data set to the source tab, we don't need to keep the CSV file open anymore. So we can close the source workbook. So I'll type wb source.close, and I don't want to save the file. Now we have the data set. Now we need to extract the components we want to use to split the table. I'll start by creating my collection object. So it's going to be set collection underscore feds is equals to new collection. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a private subroutine. And this subroutine is going to use kind of like a function, except that we're going to use this subroutine to generate our collection object. I'll name this subroutine generate collection. The reason why I want to create a separate subroutine to perform this task is because inside this subroutine, I'll be handling different types of error, and I don't want to override the error handler that I created in the main subroutine. So here I'm going to create my parameters. The first parameter is going to be by reference, and I'll name this parameter collection obj, stands for collection object. The next parameter is going to be the worksheet object, and for this object, since I don't want to modify the object when we finish, so I'm going to use by value, and I'll name this parameter worksheet underscore object as worksheet. Oh, and here I forgot to declare the data type as collection. And the third variable is going to be the targets column. And it's going to be by value. And the data type is going to be long. Inside this subroutine, I'll declare my last row variable and row number variable as long. And here's a typo. And right here, I want to insert my air handler. So I'm going to type on air, except that this time I'm going to ignore all the errors. So I'm going to use the resume next statement. So it's going to be on air, resume next. So within the worksheets object, I want to figure out the last row first based on the target column argument .end Excel up .row. Now I can insert a loop to iterate each row within the source worksheet. So the loop is going to be for row number is equals to, I want to start my loop from row number 2 to last row. When we add an item to the collection object, in a collection object, we cannot have duplicate keys. If we don't have the on air resume next statement, then we're going to run into duplicate key error. And by ignoring the error, we can basically just continue adding new keys until all the rows are iterated. So here I'm going to insert my collection object .add, and my first parameter is the value. The value is not important, so here we can assign the target value, the target column. So I want to add all the keys based on column D. The key parameter is what is important because when we add all the keys to the collection object, we know all the keys are unique, and since our list has multiple duplicates, when we finish creating the collection object, we know what is left is going to be our unique list. And the key must be a string data type. So we need to use the convert string function, so CSTR function, to convert the value to a string data type. And this is going to be .cells based on the row number, based on the target column, .value. And that's it. Now here, let me go back to the main subroutine. Now let me put a stop statement right here, and I'll call the generate collection subroutine. I will assign the collection FED's object and the WS source worksheet. And I want to extract the unique list based on column 4, which is column D. Actually, I should put stop right here. It's above. Now if I run the macro, oops, I have a typo. Now if I execute the macro, and I'm going to select the file, and let me open the immediate window. Now if I print the collection object item count, and that gives me 2. And if I print the first item's key, and that's going to print the value for the first item. Right, so after the stop statement, I'm going to insert the with statement with WS source object, and I can delete the stop statement. At this point, we're basically just filtering the data set based on all the lists in the collection object. Here we need to grab the last row value again. And I'm going to grab the last row value based on column A. Because A is going to be our primary key, and we know all the rows in column A are required. To make this program more polished, I'll display a message on the status bar. and I want to print splitting CSV files. And once we finish, want to clear the status bar. So application.status bar, and to clear the message, we'll assign empty string. Now let's iterate each item within the collection FED's object. So I'm going to say that for each V in collection FEDS object, I want to grab the FED ID first, and it's going to be FED ID is equals to V. Next, I want to apply an auto filter to my data set. So my data set is going to be from column A to column G, actually column AG. The last row number is not important because we already have the last row number from the last row variable. So here I'm going to insert my range address from A1 to AG. I want to combine with the last row value, and want to apply the auto filter based on column D, and the field ID is going to be column 4. And for the criteria, it's going to be FED ID. And here we insert note, filtering data set based on category value. So from this statement, when we apply the auto filter, that's the data set we want to save into its individual file. Since we want to save the output in a new Excel spreadsheet, so here we want to create our WB output object, and want to create a new spreadsheet. And I'll copy the data sets from the result of the auto filter. I want to copy the data set to the output file. That worksheet, it's going to be index 1, that range A1. Now let me launch. So let's take a look at all the formats we can save first. So I want to figure out the CSV file format, and it's going to be value 6. So let's go back. So when we save the Excel file as CSV file, we need to assign the formats value. So we can save the output file. So I'll type wb output.save as, and the file name is going to be the category name, FED ID. I want to concatenate with the extension name, so .csv followed by the file format, which is 6. Now I can close the file, and I don't want to save the change, so I'm going to set the value to false. And finally, we need to empty out the WB output object when we finish running all the actions. Alright, so this is everything we need to write for the macro. Now if I go back to the master spreadsheet, which is the macro enable file, and here I can, so this is relevant. So when we run the macro, the clear content statement, let me see, it should be right here. So this statement right here is going to clear everything on the source tab. Now if I go to view, macros, and I'll run the split CSV macro, and I'll select my source data file. And once the macro is finished, and here are my 2 CSV files. So let me open the second file just to make sure that we're getting the correct data set. So if I look at column D, all the FED IDs are G4612, and which match to what we have based on the file name. And this couple things I want to clean up. So here, let me go back to the VBA code. So inside the loop, I want to make sure that I reset the auto filter setting. So here, let me do that real quick. WS source, actually should be auto filter mode is equals to false. So that way, when we finish the procedure, the auto filter setting is not going to be applied. So let me run the macro again. Now we're getting this notification asking, do you want to override the existing CSV file? We can say no, or we can say yes. I'm going to say yes. And we need to do the same thing for the second file. And this time, the auto filter settings is not applied. So here, let me go back to the VBA code again. To disable the notification, so here, let me let me change the setting. So it's going to be application.display alerts. I want to set the display alerts value to false. And the statement is going to disable the notification. And when we finish, we need to make sure that we set the notification back. And that's it. Alright, so this is everything that we need to write for this VBA code. And let me save this file just to make sure that I have everything saved. And by the way, you can access the source code and this template file from the link in the description below. Alright, so this is everything I want to share in this video. And hopefully you guys found the video useful. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video.